Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at full inclusion in schools.
Okay.
You know, the idea of like integrating students with disabilities into general education classrooms.
Right.
And you sent in this article that I thought was super interesting from the outside
Yeah.
by Jaime Hoerricks, a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And it really questions if this is always the best approach, you know?
Yeah.
The title alone, The Illusion of Inclusion, Systemic Failures Hidden Beneath Flawed Evidence,
Whoa.
makes you wonder, like, is the whole concept flawed or just how we're doing it, you
Right.
know? And that's kind of what I want to dig into today.
Yeah.
So, we have an expert here today who's fantastic at dissecting these big picture systems.
Oh, thanks.
And I'm already hooked, like right out of the gate.
Yeah.
The article's saying that a lot of the research that we have to support full inclusion has some serious weaknesses methodologically.
Mm-hmm.
Could you maybe break that down for us a little bit?
Sorry.
Like, what makes research good research? And why is that so important when we're talking about something like this?
Well, you're right to be cautious about the research.
Okay.
We need to be really critical of how studies are done,
Yeah.
especially in education.
Yeah.
A big problem is something called selection bias.
Okay.
So imagine researchers saying,
Okay.
exercise is amazing for everyone, but they only studied Olympic athletes.
Right.
That's not really the whole picture, is it?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So you can't really generalize from a group that's already super fit.
Right.
Exactly. So in inclusion research, we need studies that randomly assign students to different settings,
Okay.
not just focus on the schools that are already doing well.
Okay.
And it's super important to consider the range of disabilities,
Okay.
like lumping all students with IEPs together.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't really give us accurate results.
So are you saying that the research we have might be making inclusion look better than it is in a lot of cases?
It's definitely a possibility.
Okay.
And the article argues it's more than just bad research.
Okay.
It's the whole system that's producing it.
Oh, wow.
It mentions these evidence mills.
Oh.
Companies that are paid to get good results,
Mm-hmm.
often by the same people who made the programs that are being studied.
So is that kind of like a restaurant that writes its own amazing reviews?
Exactly. Like it's a
Oh.
huge conflict of interest.
Yeah, totally.
Do you want an example of how that might actually play out?
Yeah, I would love an example. Yeah.
Oh, sure. So imagine a company develops a new reading program
Mm-hmm.
specifically designed for inclusion classrooms.
Okay.
They then hire a research firm,
Uh-huh.
maybe even their own internal team, to study how effective it is.
Okay.
There's pressure on the researchers to show good results,
Yeah.
which could mean that they overlook flaws
Yeah.
or they only highlight the successes. They might even manipulate the data.
Wow.
And this biased research is then used to promote the program. So it creates this cycle where the focus is on selling a product,
Uh-huh.
not necessarily what helps students the most.
So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
Yeah, it can feel very circular.
Yeah.
Right? And then you add in the fact that education is chronically underfunded,
Right.
particularly special education.
Yeah, I mean, how are schools even supposed to realistically implement this when
Yeah.
they're already stretched so thin?
Right.
It's like trying to bake a cake and you only have half the ingredients. It's
Yeah.
not going to work.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Without enough money, schools might be forced into inclusion
Right.
as a way to cut costs.
Yeah.
Even if they don't have what they need to do it well.
Right.
Things like specialized teacher training,
Okay.
smaller class sizes,
Mm-hmm.
additional support staff. These are often missing.
So even if a school wants to do inclusion, right,
Yeah.
they might be set up to fail right from the beginning.
Exactly. And that leads to another point the article brings up,
Yeah.
a lack of teacher training in co-teaching.
Okay.
Most teacher prep programs don't really prepare teachers
Yeah.
to collaborate and support different kinds of learners in an inclusive setting.
Wait, so even if a school wants to do inclusion, right,
Yeah.
their teachers might not actually know how to make it work.
That's a really common problem.
Wow.
Teachers need specific training on things like co-teaching strategies,
Okay.
differentiated instruction for different needs,
Mm-hmm.
classroom management techniques for a wider range of behaviors and learning styles.
Okay.
Without that training, it's like
Yeah.
asking someone to build a house without giving them any tools or blueprints.
Right. They have the best intentions.
Yeah,
But they just don't even know where to begin.
exactly.
Okay. And this article doesn't shy away from like the cultural side of this either.
Hmm.
It mentions the situation where Dr. Hoerricks, who's a special education teacher,
Right.
felt treated as like a behavior monitor by their co-teacher, not a real teacher at all.
Uh-huh.
So how can we call this inclusion
Right.
if one teacher is basically sidelined like that?
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And it highlights a problem that goes way back.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
there's often this stigma around special education,
Okay.
both within the teaching profession and in society as a whole.
Interesting.
Special education is seen as less than general education.
So you're saying there's this power imbalance where the general education teacher is seen as like the real teacher,
Right.
and the special ed teacher is just there to like help with the difficult kids.
Unfortunately, yeah.
That's not inclusion at all.
No, it's not.
Okay.
And this power dynamic undermines the SPED teacher's expertise and their authority in the classroom.
Right.
You know, it sends a bad message to the students.
Mm-hmm.
It prevents real collaboration from happening.
Yeah.
And the article argues that this cultural bias against special education is a huge barrier to making inclusion really work.
So we've got all these problems, and then isn't it ironic that accommodations are meant to help students with IEPs succeed?
Right.
But they're often seen as like burdens by general education teachers.
That's a really good observation.
Yeah.
The article makes that point too.
Huh.
When we see accommodations as extra work
Mm-hmm.
or like unfair advantages,
Mm-hmm.
we're basically saying students with disabilities are less capable.
Right.
And that goes against everything inclusion is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
It can make the students we're trying to include feel even more isolated.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So to sum up,
Yeah.
we've got potentially flawed research, schools that don't have enough money,
Right.
a cultural bias against special education,
Yeah.
and this idea that accommodations are a burden.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that full inclusion is struggling.
Right.
They're-
Like it seems like the system is almost designed to make this not work.
It's definitely a complex web of problems.
Yeah.
The article really shows how these issues are all connected.
Mhm.
You know, it paints a pretty bleak picture
Mhm.
of how inclusion is working right now.
Right.
But it's not saying inclusion is a bad thing.
Okay.
It's trying to show the systemic flaws that are preventing it from being successful
Mhm.
for everyone involved.
That's an important distinction.
Yeah.
So it seems like we need to look deeper at how inclusion is often presented, not as a choice for teaching, but as a way to save money.
You're getting at something really important there.
Okay.
It connects to the bigger idea of what's called neoliberalism in education.
Neoliberalism. Okay.
It's the idea that market forces should be in charge of everything,
Wow.
even how we educate our kids.
Okay.
Being efficient and cutting costs become the most important things.
Yeah.
And that can hurt both students and teachers.
Can you explain what neoliberalism actually looks like in a school? Like, what does that look like in real life?
So imagine a school district needs to cut their budget.
Okay.
They might decide to get rid of a program for students with disabilities,
Okay.
saying they want to be more efficient at inclusive.
Right.
But this decision might be more about money problems than actually caring about the students' needs.
I see. Yeah.
So less money goes to support services.
Oh.
Class sizes get bigger.
Hmm.
Teachers have to handle more different needs,
Okay.
but they don't get the training or help they need.
Yeah.
This kind of market-driven approach puts saving money ahead of the well-being of students and teachers,
Okay.
making true inclusion almost impossible.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And Dr. Hoerricks shares this story in the article
Oh, yeah.
about their special day class being shut down in the name of inclusion. But it was really clear that it was about staffing shortages and cutting costs.
Right.
And they got reassigned as an RSP teacher, which seems more like filling a gap than making a good decision for students.
That's a really common story.
Wow.
The article shows the difference between what people say about inclusion,
Right.
the idea that it's good for everyone,
Right.
and the reality, where money problems and biases make it hard for it to work.
This is all pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's more to this story. The article isn't just complaining, right?
Yeah,
It offers some solutions, right?
absolutely.
Right.
It's not all doom and gloom.
Okay.
Dr. Hoerricks lays out a vision for what real inclusion could look like.
Okay.
And that's what we're going to be talking about next.
I'm ready for some optimism.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear what the solutions are.
We'll talk about how we can move beyond standardized tests,
Okay.
invest in teacher training, and create a culture of collaboration and respect in our schools.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
All right. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. it's encouraging to know that there are solutions out there.
Yeah.
And this article,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't just point out the problems.
Right.
It actually offers a path forward
Okay, good.
for how we can get inclusion, right?
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin?
Right. Well, the article starts by challenging how we measure success.
Okay.
It says we need to move beyond standardized tests.
Okay, so I can definitely see how that's a problem. Like standardized tests, they don't always show the whole picture of what a student can do or how much they're learning, especially students with different ways of learning.
Exactly.
But if we get rid of those tests, how do we even know if inclusion is working?
That's a great question.
Like, what are the new ways to see if it's successful?
Well, it's about changing our focus
Okay.
from just looking at test scores
Okay.
to looking at the whole student. So instead of just scores,
Mm-hmm.
we should be asking things like, are students making progress based on where they started?
Okay. Yeah.
Are they learning to think critically, solve problems?
Okay.
Are they actually enjoying learning?
Yeah.
These are the things that really show if an inclusive environment is working.
So it's a lot more about each student's individual journey,
Exactly.
not just these like blanket standards.
Absolutely.
That might not even apply to everybody.
It's about moving away from that one-size-fits-all model.
Right.
Yeah, and creating learning environments that are flexible
Mm-hmm.
and really tailored to each student's needs.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so the article also talks about like the need for big investments in things like teacher training, smaller class sizes.
Mm-hmm. And having more people to help out in the classroom.
Sounds like we need some pretty big changes.
They are big changes, but they're absolutely necessary
Okay.
if we want to create a system where inclusion can actually work
Okay.
for both students and teachers.
Okay, so let's break that down.
Yeah.
What does that look like practically?
So teachers, they need training on how to co-teach effectively,
Okay.
how to adjust their lessons for different learners, how to manage a classroom where students have a lot of different needs.
Okay.
It's also really important to make class sizes smaller.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So teachers have the time and the space to connect with each student individually.
Right, because if you have a class of 30 kids, you can't give everyone the attention they need.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
And then we need more support staff,
Okay.
like paraprofessionals, counselors, and therapists.
Okay.
They all play a vital role in making inclusion work.
Yeah, and I think that's something that often gets overlooked.
Yeah.
Is that it's not just on the teacher. There needs to be a whole team of people.
A whole system of support.
Yeah. Okay, there's this line from the article that really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah. Tell me.
Designing instruction for the student with the most complex needs doesn't lower standards.
Right.
It raises the bar for accessibility and engagement.
I love that quote.
It's so powerful.
It is.
Because it completely changes how we usually think about accommodations.
Yeah, it challenges that idea that inclusion makes things easier for everyone.
Right. Yeah.
When really, it's about making sure everyone has the same opportunities to learn and grow.
Right. And if you're designing your classroom and your curriculum with those students in mind, everyone benefits.
Exactly. Everyone is challenged and engaged.
Yeah.
No matter their learning style or ability.
So it's really not lowering the bar at all.
Not at all.
It's making things better for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also think it's important to talk about the cultural shift that needs to happen.
Yes.
Like within the teaching profession and in society as a whole.
Yeah.
We need to move past this stigma around special education.
Yes, absolutely.
And start recognizing SPED teachers as the experts they are.
Right. They bring so much to the table.
Yeah.
They're experts in differentiating instruction, providing accommodations, and supporting students with different needs.
And their expertise should be valued.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not seen as a burden.
Okay, so how do we change that?
Well, it starts at the top. School administrators, they need to create a culture of respect.
Yeah.
Where SPA teachers are seen as equals,
okay,
not just assistants.
So it's about creating a space where they have a voice.
Exactly.
And their expertise is truly valued.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
The article also challenges us to rethink the classroom itself.
Yeah.
To make it a truly inclusive space where every student feels welcome and supported.
Yeah, what do you think that might look like?
I think it means moving away from that traditional model of like one teacher standing at the front of the room lecturing while the students just sit there and listen.
Yeah.
Like we need to make learning more active and engaging.
Yeah, what about incorporating more group work?
Okay, yeah.
Hands-on activities.
Yeah.
Using technology in ways that work for different learning styles.
I'd love that.
Giving students more control over what they're learning.
Yeah.
Letting them work at their own pace.
And explore things that interest them.
Right, because if they're interested, they're going to learn better.
Exactly. And I think it's about recognizing that every student is an individual.
Yes, absolutely.
With their own strengths, their own challenges, their own goals and dreams.
Right, and our educational system should support that instead of trying to fit them all into the same mold.
This all sounds amazing, but also a little daunting.
Yeah.
It's a big change in how we think about education.
It is.
So for our listener out there who's maybe just one person, what can they actually do to help make this vision a reality?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that change starts locally.
Okay.
One of the best things you can do is advocate for inclusive policies in your own community.
So you're talking about getting involved with our local schools?
Yes.
Going to school board meetings?
Exactly. Yeah. Make your voice heard.
Okay.
Let your school board know that you want them to prioritize the needs of all students.
Okay.
Share your experiences, talk about the benefits of inclusion, and advocate for more funding and resources for special education.
Okay, what about supporting teachers directly?
That's crucial too.
Yeah.
You can get involved with your parent-teacher organization.
Okay.
Volunteer in the classroom. Donate supplies.
Yeah.
Just simple things.
Yeah.
To show teachers that you appreciate them.
Okay.
Let them know that you see how hard they're working.
Yeah.
And that you're there to support them.
And the article also mentions the need for better research on inclusion.
Yes, absolutely.
Research that's not funded by those evidence mills.
Right.
How can we support research that gives us a clearer picture of what's really working?
You can donate to organizations that are doing independent research on inclusive education.
Okay.
You can contact your elected officials and ask them to support more funding for educational research, especially research that focuses on equity and inclusion.
So we need to make sure the research is unbiased and reliable.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's about being informed, advocating for better research, and supporting the people who are doing the work on the ground.
Exactly.
To make inclusion a reality.
And it's about remembering that inclusion isn't just an educational issue.
Okay.
It's a societal issue.
Right. Like it affects everyone.
Yeah, it's about creating a world where everyone feels valued, respected, and empowered to reach their full potential.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like we've gone beyond just talking about inclusion in schools. We're talking about creating a more inclusive society.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Yeah.
And while the challenges are real, I'm feeling really hopeful about the possibilities.
Yeah, me too.
There are things we can do to make a difference.
So what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from this?
I want them to remember that inclusion is not just about putting students with disabilities in general education classrooms.
Okay.
It's about creating a culture of belonging, a culture of equity, a culture of respect for individual differences.
I love that.
And that requires a fundamental shift in how we think about education, how we fund our schools, and how we interact with each other.
Wow, that's a powerful message.
It's a big task,
but
it's also incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, I agree.
We all have a part to play
in
creating a more inclusive world.
Okay, so that's a great place to leave it for now.
Yeah.
We'll dive into some more specific action steps in the next part.
Good.
But for now, we hope you'll take some time to think about what we've talked about. And consider how you can contribute to a more inclusive future.
A future for everyone. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So as we wrap up our look at inclusion in education, I'm honestly feeling pretty energized by all the possibilities we've been talking about.
Yeah, me too.
You know, it's clear that we need a big change in how we think about this, but also that change is totally possible if willing to put in the work.
Absolutely. I think this conversation has been really thought-provoking.
Yeah.
We've talked about the challenges, the things that are really hard about making inclusion work, but also that incredible potential.
Right.
Like we could create learning environments where every student can really thrive.
Okay, so let's get practical.
Yeah.
Like, what are some things our listener can actually do to make a difference in their own community?
Yeah.
We've talked about these big systemic changes.
Right.
But real change starts at the local level, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the most important things you can do is advocate for inclusive policies and practices.
Okay.
Right, in your own school district.
So like going to school board meetings?
Yeah.
Speaking up during those public comment periods?
Exactly.
Contacting our elected officials?
Yes.
Those are good starting points.
Those are great ways to make your voice heard.
Okay.
Let your school board know that inclusion matters to you and that you expect them to put the needs of all students first.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to share your own experiences.
Yeah.
Highlight the research that shows the benefits of inclusion and push for more funding and resources for special education.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about supporting teachers directly?
Oh, that's so important.
Yeah.
They're the ones in the classrooms every day trying to make inclusion work.
Yeah, so what can we do to help them?
Well, you can get involved with your parent-teacher organization.
Okay.
You can volunteer in the classroom, donate supplies, even small gestures of appreciation can really make a difference for teachers.
Yeah, just to let them know that they're seen and appreciated.
Exactly. Let them know you see how hard they're working.
Yeah.
And that you support them.
And I think it's also important to remember what we talked about earlier about the need for good research on inclusion.
Right.
Research that's not coming from those evidence mills with their own agenda.
Absolutely. So how can we support independent research that gives us a clear and unbiased picture of what's really working for students?
Well, one way is by donating to organizations that fund independent research on inclusion.
Yeah.
We can also contact our elected officials and ask them to support more funding for educational research, especially research that focuses on equity and inclusion.
So it's about being thoughtful about the research we're using to make decisions about education.
Yeah, making sure it's unbiased and reliable.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about advocating for policy changes, supporting teachers, and pushing for better research.
Right.
But Dr. Hoerricks also talked about something else in the article.
Oh, what's that?
The importance of personal connection.
Right, that's so crucial.
Yeah, so how do we actually put that into practice?
It's about creating a school environment where everyone feels like they belong, where everyone feels seen, heard, and respected.
Yeah, I like that.
So get to know the special education teachers at your child's school.
Oh, hi.
Have conversations with students with disabilities.
Yeah.
Just be kind and respectful in all your interactions.
It's about those everyday actions that can really make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. It all adds up.
Yeah, and I think this deep dive has really shown that we can all be advocates for inclusion.
Absolutely.
Even in small ways.
Yes, inclusion isn't just about doing the right thing. It's about making the world a better place for everyone.
Yeah.
When we embrace diversity and give all students the chance to succeed, we all benefit.
This whole conversation has been so eye-opening. I've learned so much.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and I'm actually feeling pretty hopeful about the future of inclusion.
Me too. I really am.
You know, we've seen that there are real steps we can take to make a difference.
And the more people who join this movement, the stronger our voice will be.
Okay, so to our listener out there, we encourage you to take what you've learned from this deep dive and turn it into action.
Yes.
Start a conversation with someone. Volunteer your time.
Yeah.
Speak up for what you believe in.
Even small steps can make a difference.
Every step counts.
They really do.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive.
Yeah, it's been great talking with you.
I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
We hope you've learned something new about inclusion and that you'll keep exploring this important topic.
Yeah, the world needs your voice.
Yeah, thanks for listening.